Hey guys, Dr. Brown here, and tonight we're working an integral of the square root of 5 minus x over 5 plus x integrated on x. Okay, now we're trying to work a few simpler problems to try to give people some kind of build your confidence that you have the ability to work through some of these and using our tools, U sub, trig sub, integration by parts, partial fractions, power reduction, long division, completing the square, and method of quadratics. Okay. Now in this one, when you first look at it, you may think, what to do here? Well, you know, in algebra, you had the rule of the square root of a over b, and that was square root a over square root b. You could break it out like that. Now, we're going to do that here. So we're going to take this, we'll leave the dx here, and we're going to rewrite that as the integral of the square root of 5 minus x over square root of 5 plus x dx. And we'll leave it like that. We've got a dx, I'll put it way out here. Now we're also going to look at the rule of if you have square root of a times b, you know, that's square root of a times square root b. Or if you have this, you can change it into that. I'm going to multiply this by the conjugate of the denominator. So I'm going to multiply that by the square root of 5 minus x. Of course, I can't just multiply the denominator, but if I have the square root of 5 minus x divided by the square root of 5 minus x, I'm multiplying all of this times 1. Now we know that these two, the radical signs drop off, but for the sake of just using this rule, we'll say, well, I have this situation. I'm going to put them both under the radical. What do I have? 5 minus x squared. Square root of that would be 5 minus x. Now in this case, I have the square root of 5 plus x. 5 plus x times 5 minus x. All of this dx. Okay. All right. The integral of 5. The square root of 5 minus x squared, and the square root of that is 5 minus x. Of course, we could have said 5 minus x to the 1/2 times 5 minus x to the 1/2. Now I have a to the m times a to the n. That's a to the m plus n. So a to the 1/2 times a to the 1/2. 1/2 plus 1/2 would be a to the first power, which is what I have here. Now, in this case, I have 25. This is square root of 25 plus 5x minus 5x. Those cancel, minus x squared dx. Hey, this is shaping up pretty good. Now then, what does this look like? This looks like a sine function. 1 minus sine squared, okay? So let's think about that for just a moment. Maybe I can do that over here so as to save some room. So well, maybe not. Let me say, all right, let's let this term be a squared. So a squared equals 25. What does that mean? A equals 5. Okay, this term, x, I'm going to let x equal a sine theta. Dx equals a, you know, the constant multiple rule. Pull the constant out, take the derivative of sine, which is cosine theta, d theta. Now I can fill in the blanks here. Integral 5 minus x, and x is a sine theta, times dx, which is a cosine theta d theta, divided by the square root of 25, which was a squared, minus x squared. Well, if x is a sine theta, x squared is a squared sine squared. Okay. Now that's the integral of 5 minus a sine theta divided by, or times a cosine theta d theta over the square root of, I'm going to factor out the a square. So it's a squared times 1 minus sine square theta. What is 1 minus sine square? It's cosine square. So I'm going to replace that with cosine squared theta. Okay, the square root of a squared is a. So this comes out, that a and this a will cancel. Cosine squared, the square root of cosine squared is cosine. So that'll cancel this term. I'm left with the integral of 5 minus a sine theta d theta. Okay, which if I break this apart is the integral of 5 d theta minus the integral, we'll pull the a out, integral of sine theta d theta. So this becomes 5 theta minus a, derivative of sine is cosine, the integral is minus cosine, so that negative cosine times this negative becomes positive cosine theta. Okay. 5 theta, what is theta? Theta would be sine inverse x over a. So this becomes 5 times sine inverse x over a plus a cosine theta. Now we need to draw our triangle. There's theta. So x over a is sine theta. So that'd be the opposite over hypotenuse. And a equals 5. So this would become, this side would be 5 squared, which is 25 minus x squared. The square root of that. Okay, so cosine would be this over 5. Cosine is square root, so it's the adjacent over hypotenuse. So 25 minus x squared over 5. Now what is a? A was 5, so I can replace a here with 5. A here was 5. So these 5s would cancel. So we would end up then with 5. This integral of the square root of 5 minus x over 5 plus x would be 5 times the sine inverse of x over 5 plus the square root of 25 minus x squared plus c. And that, my friend, is this integral. Now, what tools did we use? We used just some basic algebra rules plus trig sub. So it trigs, u sub, trig sub, the integration by parts, the partial fractions, power reduction, long division, completing the square, and method of quadratics. Those 8 tools, if you can master those, even with simple problems like this, it allows you to manipulate that into a method to solve it. So keep studying. Why are we doing this? Together we're trying to build a better tomorrow and do that through math. Keep studying. That's all for now. We'll talk to you next time. Thanks.